Okay, so we're all gonna come up here and you guys are gonna ask questions. I'm sure there's lots of questions. Perfect.
Oh, okay.
You get a microphone.
That was quick. I have a question. I did not really understand what you when you told us that FARC might Sorry. You said that no, doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to
Just shout.
loudly. Yeah. I have a question regarding when you talked about how FARC might buy the elections afterwards. That was a big concern. My question is, what happens with the wealth that they have amassed during all these years by illegal activity? Will they be able to keep that? And if not, would that not be part of what they would maybe pay to as a penalty for the reconstruction of the country?
There has been no agreement on reparations yet. Many Colombians want the FARC to pay. It's unknown how much money the FARC actually has, but let me tell you, by my own estimates, the FARC have been making at a minimum $300 million a year from the drug trade. There are other estimates that go much higher. I think that they are overestimates. But it's one of the richest groups that you've ever seen in the world, right? So, given that, what are they going to turn over the money? No. Is it hard to follow the money? Yes, absolutely. Are the questions of reparations still underway? Who will pay, right, for all this? What part will the FARC pay? Still not yet resolved. But the FARC, no matter what it does on reparations, right, what it agrees to, will still have money. And I'm not saying they're going to buy the elections. I didn't say that. I said they're going to help organize. And given the grassroots, they're very powerful.
I think I need to another question. I think I agree with that. So, yeah. Are there other questions?
I think we got the other.
I would forbid it to ask. I would like to know, in principle, how positive.
Use the microphone so they can hear you.
How positive and how negative you are about this, because the amount of questions that are still open give me a very negative opinion of where the whole process is going to end up. Go ahead.
I think what you feel is exactly how we all feel. His question was, are you in favor or against? Right?
No, my question is, how positive are you about you
About
all
the
seem
peace
to
process?
you all seem to agree that the peace agreement is going to be signed.
Yes.
How positive are you that this is going to end up in a positive peace and not establish a society that is going to even be worse off after the agreement than before?
There are several alternatives. I would say that we are all positive that the peace will be signed. What happens after, it's a bit uncertain. Dr. Bagley explained very well the alternative to not have it signed. So it would be one of those cases, I believe, where the second best could be the best. Signing peace is much better than not signing it and returning to reels of violence. Why did they, I had this question, we have had so many discussions about it because we also wonder, why did President Santos engage in this process instead of continuing with democratic security policy? And I personally agree that they wouldn't have signed any type of demobilization or disarmament if it wasn't through this whole institution of the peace process that has returned to the FARC their power, international power, some sort of dignification of their fight. To answer your question, am I positive or negative? I think that signing the peace process, the country will have an opportunity that without signing it, it wouldn't have. What we make of that opportunity will depend on our institutions, the economy, and the Colombian society. But yes, I'm positive.
But I would say the same
I'm positive. I think this is a signing. I am the most optimistic of the group, as I can see, so I'm going to try to bring some of my optimism to you. My optimism rests in the fact that I believe the war in Colombia has cost a lot, and while I respect my economist colleague who has done all this analysis much deeper than I think the costs of the war are many intangible costs that we cannot measure. We already know that the loss in lives is just 1 point already of the GDP. And if you add up more sophisticated measures to it, you would see that the gain of having even a negative peace, which is the absence of violence, will be immense. Now, the big problem, and that's why I spent a clumsy time with my presentation trying to, the big problem is that if we don't manage to transition from the distrust between the FARC and the Colombian, I don't think the government, I think the government trusts the FARC far more than anybody else, which is ironic because it was President Santos, the minister that hit most of the secretariado members of the FARC. He hit, I don't know how many, 11, we used to cross them. We had like, cross them all. He was the most efficient Ministry of Justice, of Defense, that Colombia has had. And it is true that he didn't improvise. His brother has understood the peace process in Colombia for more than 30 years. I think he's one of the brightest minds. And he's a mastermind behind the peace process. He's the one that actually goes to Cuba. He's the one that actually told Timochenko to go and shake hands with President, because there was a degree that Lilian describes incredibly well of distrust in the society that this peace process was secret. And I think that was a huge mistake. The peace process should have stayed secret as it was until the end, because it was precisely these impartial deliveries of the agreements that I tried to show you that actually created the chaos and the distrust that we don't need, the skepticism that we don't need. I have been working in the past summer for 2 months with victims of conflict, mainly women. Women that have been not just displaced, but women that have been raped, women that have been tortured, women that have lost absolutely everything. And I can tell you one thing, these women are building grassroots movements that are unbelievable. The degree of sophistication of their political agendas are beyond our comprehension. So what Bruce just said about the FARC becoming a political party is a reality. But the victims are also going to become a political party, and they represent 15% of the Colombian population. We shouldn't forget the numbers. That's why I'm optimistic, because I'm not optimistic that we have so many victims. I'm optimistic because it is a huge potential capital. And the women out there, and I'm proud to say that it's the women out there that are actually creating this politics behind in the most incomprehensible manners. Women that have created politics using the facade of community leaders. Women that have actually taken the lead because they were suddenly left without the breadwinning possibility and had to become the main providers of the house and take care of their kids, of their old parents, of the victims, of the traumas. I mean, these are huge traumas, and they are coping with all this. So this gives me a lot of room for being positive. While the cost of the process are humongous, I think the Colombians are going to have to put a hand in their pockets and pay for the peace, because the benefits of the peace are enormous.
Listen, without extending, because I agree with my colleagues, the post-conflict period, as it's called in Colombia, is going to be conflictual, but it's going to be better than having an organized FARC army, right? With the hugely high levels of homicide rates, right? Ambushes of government authorities and the rest. But no one should delude themselves. Colombia is not going to become, Switzerland overnight. Colombia is going to continue to be plagued by drug trafficking and drug gangs and by violence, right? It has been throughout, right? Its modern history. Under these circumstances, we should see it getting gradually better, right? Not overnight becoming, right, something that Colombia is never going to become, which is an entirely peaceful country. It's better. It's not going to be the best for a long time.
Quick question.
just to add to your concerns, environmental destruction or the oil bombings.
The pipelines. Look, with regard to coca, right, which has been the big deal, the opening of the agricultural frontier, right, has basically denuded parts of the Amazonian forest, and it's been a very serious problem. So that has caused deforestation and erosion. If you add to that the fact that the Colombian government has, in pursuit of 160,000 hectares to 200,000 hectares of coca fields, sprayed over 2 million hectares, right, in the last less than 10 years, with glyphosate or Roundup Ultra, right, which has polluted streams and lagoons and forests around the country, and which the World Health Organization just declared a cancer-causing agent, right? You've got a running start at beginning to estimate what the ecological damages are, but they don't stop there, because every time the Colombian government has been able to neutralize a particular area of coca growing, you know, they leave the peasants with very few options. The option is to, for the girls to go into the cities and become prostitutes, and that's a major problem in Colombia, in every city that I've been in the last 10 or 20 years. Or for the boys to join gangs of various sorts, or for those survivors that make it through, kids and or women, right, to go out to the monte and to begin to cultivate coca again, so they actually expand the areas that are being destroyed ecologically in both the Amazonian region and in the Choco rainforest. If you add to that the guerrillas, right, interdiction of the major pipelines, particularly the Caño Limón one, and the spillage that has taken place, we're talking about millions of gallons over the last 25 years, right, that have been spilled into the headwaters of the Amazon River. You begin to get a sense, right, of what's going to go on. If the FARC cooperates, right, and reduces the area under cultivation, which is probably going to happen, there are also innovations with the cultivation of coca that mean you need fewer hectares to grow the same amount, to get the same metric tonnage, if you like. We are probably not going to see an expansion of coca cultivation or even opium poppy cultivation in Colombia. The FARC may actually help to reduce it in some senses. But there is going to be great pressure in a number of areas, especially extremely fragile llanos and Amazonian jungle areas that cannot sustain agriculture over a period of time. There's going to be a great deal of pressure for peasants to move into those areas unless the government develops programs that settle them in areas that are more appropriate for sustainable agriculture. In many senses, Colombia has to adjust to the delicacy and the fragileness of both the Amazonian region and the Choco rainforest, growing rubber and other kinds of things, and it has to give help, assistance programs, and investment capital, right, in order to make that happen, or you will see huge amounts of pressure by the overpopulation in the countryside that cannot find work anywhere else, moving out to Barmonte again and open up an agricultural frontier once again.
Hope it works. Yeah. When I hit it, it works.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a general question. Every conflict is unique and every place is unique. But if we think of other peace and reconciliation process around the world, I'm thinking of Northern Ireland or Rwanda or Sierra Leone or Uganda, which one of these conflicts or which group of these conflicts, or what kind of lessons that could be applied to the Colombian situation?
Lessons?
Lessons?
Yes. Well, I think the Colombian peace process actually has been built with the lessons of all the peace processes that have used the framework of transitional justice. I'm just going to name a few. Northern Ireland has been a great inspiration for Colombia because there was a criminal element behind, and President Uribe with the paramilitaries used a lot of the Good Friday Agreement. But the transitional justice scheme comes from all the peace processes that have been successful: Argentina, Chile, South Africa. South Africa was the Colombia wanted to be a truth commission, and I think we have time to explore that. That is a fantastic avenue. But Colombia, unlike South Africa, cannot and could not accept, precisely because of the dilemmas, the ethical emotions, and all the issues that I mentioned earlier, actually accept to
even amnesty for the truth. Colombians will not take that. As you know, it's a very polarized, I think every country is polarized. I think we sometimes overestimate the emotions of Colombians. I think every country feels the same.
It's not enough just to tell the truth. There has to be some form of
And there
punishment,
is, and there
community
is.
service.
But that is what restorative justice is. It's the new, and this is what we learned from many countries, and South Africa has been a great model. We also have learned that if there is no reconciliation, and this is what I was making a huge emphasis at the beginning of the talk. I want to go back to just one point and pass it to my colleagues. I think that overall, there will never be a peace process that, as I said earlier, peace processes are the easiest part of peace building. This is the easy thing, what we just did, or what we're doing, what we're about to sign. The difficulty is actually constructing reconciliation. It takes years. John Paul Lederach speaks about a similar number of years to reconstruct a country than the ones that the conflict lasted. So we're looking at 50 years. Because the society is divided, but we have used all the mechanisms, Richard, that exist, that are around there, and I think we've used them very well. I think they are impeccably dealt with. They have been actually analyzed, so the setting is good. The institutional setting is good. What we do with it is another question.
The Salvadorian case would also be, El Salvador would be also a similar case to the Colombian one, with the exception that they didn't have this terrible presence that we have of such a starring role of drug trafficking. But also their mobilization, the process of negotiation would be similar, although it was 20 years ago.
I'm fully agreed.
Good afternoon. I'm a Colombian living in the country. I'm actually here for the same program. But I'm totally in agreement and I'm really positive about the process that we're facing in Colombia. But I think everybody talks about how to finance the reconciliation and everything. And I think this is going to be a huge problem for us as Colombian, as for us as a citizen, because we're going to pay this process. No doubt about it. But I think we have to be more innovative in looking for the best way to finance that, different than financing this fiscal deficit. Because everybody, as a citizen, I can speak to my citizens in there, entrepreneurs and everything, who are really tired for tax reforms and everything. So, we